Hey, this is C and D Channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC Fight Night 43. Overall, this was a lot better card than I thought it'd be. On paper, you just had so many lower level fighters, and I don't even know if you had a top 10 guy. But, they had a good amount of knockouts and a good amount of, subs. Some pretty slick submissions. A submission of the year here, actually, from Charles Oliveira. And, the fights are actually pretty good for the most part. There weren't too many, stinkers, except for maybe, there's a grinder with Rochelle versus Palele. I kind of expected that to be a grinder anyways. It actually wasn't too bad. It goes with this whole, idea that, sometimes the worst cards on paper turn out to be the most entertaining. It's true and not true. There's actually times when, I can't remember, but I know there were a couple, cards that looked bad on paper that turned out to be bad on paper. This one, though, good card. I was actually pretty fond of it. The crowd from New Zealand, good crowd. They were really into the action and whatnot. And they should be. Like I said, this was a really fun card. Bonuses, as far as fight bonus go, Jean Vellante and Sean O'Connell, they got fight of the night. Their fight got fight of the night. And Nate Marquardt and Charles Oliveira got performance of the night honors. As far as my picks go, not too bad. 7 out of 10. I missed Daniel Hooker versus Ian Entwistle, Nate Marquardt versus James Huna, and Robert Whitaker versus Mike Rhodes. Got all the other ones correct, though. So, let's get started. Nate Marquardt defeated James Huna by armbar in the first round. I think the lesson here really is, and we're starting to see it more and more, weight cutting isn't some sort of cure-all. It's not going to make you a better fighter. It'll make you a bigger fighter, but it's not going to make you a better fighter, and this fight really showed it. Coming in, I knew Nate Marquardt was the more well-rounded fighter, but I knew James Huna, what it was is that James Huna hits really hard. And I think this fight kind of shows a couple things. One, 205, it actually goes to the light heavyweight division is really thin. Not to be mean, I actually like James Huna, but, not to be mean, he's not that good of a fighter. I hate to say it, He hits hard. He's a good enough kickboxer, good enough striker. He's not a great striker by any stretch. His ground game still needs some work. Most of his losses are by submission. He's improving upon it. But for the most part, he's just nominally skilled at best. He's very mid-level. And in any other division, he had a win streak, and his best win was against, Ryan Jimmo. And from Jimmo, he jumps to, Glover Teixeira. And after Glover Teixeira, he fights Shogun. And they didn't even seem like inappropriate fights at that time. So it goes to show just the talent gap in 205, first of all. A guy like James Huna, he can get a win streak and start fighting against some pretty low-level competition and get top 10, after 3 wins in a row or so, he can get the top 10 guys. That's just how thin the division is. It's just how lacking, it's really one of the thinner divisions now, lacking, quite honestly, a lot of quality prospects and whatnot. This move to 185, it wasn't anything wrong with the move, per se. I don't think he looked that bad. He managed to get a good hit on Marquardt, too. Otherwise, Marquardt outstruck him. He got this really good knee early on that wobbled him, out-wrestled him, out-jiu-jitsu'd him. He was just I always knew Marquardt's a really well-rounded fighter, but it really showed here. Another interesting thing of note in this fight was to Huna. It had a cool walkout too. Came with the Haka walkout, which is pretty neat to see. You just don't see too many different types of walkouts in the UFC. Otherwise, yeah, it's a good one for Marquardt. To Huna, I mean, just because you cut weight and just because you're bigger than everyone else doesn't mean you're better than everyone else. That's the reality, and we've seen it a good amount of times. And guys that were like mid-level guys, like Jeremy Stevens or T.J. Grant, that cut down, became, it's not the weight cut just all of a sudden made them better fighters. I mean, Jeremy Stevens, he also moved his training camp to Alliance, and you can see the improvement. I don't know what happened to T.J. Grant. He just looks really better with his Muay Thai. But for the most part, you still need to work on your skill set in order to get, cutting weight by itself isn't going to make you a top 10 guy. There's this need to improve. Not saying, he's not training or something. He obviously is. It just, a lot of people use the weight, changing weight divisions. That's kind of like this, idea of, fixing the problems, Actually, Marquardt kind of did that going down to welterweight. And he got early success by beating Tyron Woodley in highlight reel fashion. And then he just lost 3 fights in a row after that, getting knocked out in 2 of them and getting his leg mangled by Safadine in another. The other thing is, too, it's just, there's kind of this idea, too, that, when you cut weight, a lot of times you're cutting weight to a deeper division. So Marquardt, the 3 guys he lost to were just really good. Ellenberger, Lombard, and Safadine. The thing with middleweight, though, especially as he moves up, is the division's getting really good. So he's got, he'll beat the Tuhunas and whatnot, but, and with Tuhuna, middleweight at this point is pretty much better than light heavyweight. So it's a really weird thing in that sense, but yeah, good one for Marquardt. I think he should get either he needs someone pretty high up there because he's kind of well known. There's a reason why he's in the main event. Former title challenger and whatnot. Was once a perennial top 10 guy. He should probably get the winner of Tim Boas versus Brad Tavares, or maybe even Yoel Romero. With Tuhuna, this is 3 losses in a row now. I think they're going to keep him because he still is a good regional talent, for New Zealand. So they can definitely use him for Australia or New Zealand cards and whatnot. He's still, he still has a role there. And I think he could probably beat a couple mid-level guys. So if they give him some more mid-level middleweights, that'd be good for him. Next fight after that, Jared Rosholt defeated Soa Palele by decision. It's 30-27. It's a typical Jared Rosholt fight, and it's exactly how I kind of thought it'd turn out. It's really wrestling heavy. Jared Rosholt thrives especially in the ride position. You see this with a lot of wrestlers. He doesn't ever try and get the hooks. Instead, he'll just go with the ride position if he gets the back. His takedown defense is good too for a guy who doesn't look particularly athletic or doesn't have this supersonic shot. I mean, he was sprawling takedowns well and whatnot. He's a good wrestler, and you can see it. One of the biggest problems with Rosholt, though, is you generally don't see anything new from Rosholt. If he wins, it's wrestling heavy, just busy enough ground and pound to win on the judges' scorecard. But he is not a natural finisher. That's a problem with Rochold. The division's kind of thin, so he can kind of get up there just because he has such high-level skill in one area. I think Rochold should probably get the winner of Mitrione versus Struve next, or Gabriel Gonzaga, perfect gatekeeper. So Palele, he lost in the way I thought he would. Funny thing is, this is the very first time in his pro MMA career that he's gone to decision. Win or lose, he always gets there's always a finish. So Palele is a good lower level gatekeeper. He'll beat your Pat Barrys, he beats your Ruan Potts. He's a guy that has a good role. If he gets on top of you and mount and he starts punching, you're gonna go to sleep. Serviceable enough stand up, good enough wrestler. So his cardio sucks really bad though. But otherwise, he still has a role there. He's just get more lower to mid tier guys at division. Maybe the loser, Mitrione Struve versus Palele. Yeah, or just any other lower to mid tier guy, really. Okay, next fight after that, Charles Oliveira defeated Hatsuyoki by submission. It was like a Darce choke mixed with something that was like a Peruvian necktie, kind of. Some are just saying it's a guillotine in the second round. Great ground battle here, man. I mean, this was just, if Hatsuyoki got the fight to the ground, Oliveira would use the butterfly, single or double butterfly, to create space and maybe to even try and sweep. There's a couple times when Oliveira was on his back, Hioki would posture up, and Oliveira would just get back to his feet and reset. There's some really good stuff here. I mean, that finish, that Darce with the triangle, with his legs, it was just really cool. First time that Hioki's ever been submitted. And the guy is such a high level, for MMA, just a high level grappler too, People don't do that to Hatsuyoki. Hioki does that to others, Well, maybe not that particular submission, but still, So, I kind of thought if Hioki would get on top that he would be able to keep Oliveira down there, but that just was not the case. I always liked what I see from Oliveira. He's only 24, 6 years in his pro MMA career. Still improving, still defensively flawed, which is going to hurt him, but otherwise, you can see the potential in him, and this is definitely a really good, notable win. And the way he won as well is good. He keeps racking up of the night honors too. So Oliveira gets a lot of those. I think Oliveira called out Nick Lentz, and I think that's an appropriate fight. I think Nick Lentz coming off a win over Gambarian, if I'm not mistaken. He's kind of on that level. Sounds good to me. Hatsuyoki, man, this guy's not the most winning fighter. They can still use him in cards in Japan or Asia. So it's more lower to mid-tier guys for him, I guess. Next fight after that, Robert Whittaker defeated Mike Rhodes by unanimous decision. Now this is actually a fight that is kind of the opposite of Charles Oliveira. Well, no, very much the same in the sense of too much too soon for Mike Rhodes. And this is actually a problem with the UFC in general. It's that they have so many shows now and going to so many different areas that they have to, they're more or less forced to sign so much talent to fill out the roster as they have so many shows. And the thing is, you're getting these prospects like Mike Rhodes who have less than 10 fights that look like they're getting into the UFC way too soon. And, he got George Sullivan in his first fight. Robert Whittaker, he's been in the UFC for a while, fought some decent enough competition there too. It just seems it was a case of Mike Rhodes just getting signed to the UFC way too early in his MMA career. Sometimes it's not the best idea for prospects to sign to the UFC, especially super early. Depending on who they're getting, though, because, Jake Matthews, he signed pretty early. But if you get more like Deshaun Johnsons and just some really low-level guys, that you can honestly see in your, like, that honestly just seemed more like a regional level guy than, it kind of makes, it's not the worst thing, but the UFC doesn't always do that, Whittaker's pretty tough, and he showed it here. I think Whittaker, I didn't know this before the fight, but he was training with TriStar, and you can see him. He was hitting really good with the right hand. I think he got a really nicely timed takedown in the third against Rhodes. Rhodes did pretty good, actually. I think he was getting his own. I think was it right hands or left hands? I forgot. But he got a couple of good hits himself. But Whittaker just seemed like the better striker, I guess. Rhodes was countering. That's what it is. Rhodes was countering really well. But Whittaker was able to get his shots off first, and managed to get a couple power strikes in there as well. And Whittaker's still a good prospect. After 2 losses in a row to Stephen Thompson and Kurt McGee, you kind of, it was easy to be down on him as a prospect. But he's only 23 years old, already has a pretty good strike, pretty good striker with pretty decent takedown defense. So, and now he's trying to TriStar. He looks a lot better, just cleaner striker. So good, good for Whittaker. I think he should fight maybe Neil Magny next, maybe even Gastelum, maybe a guy like a Patrick Cote even. Mike Rhodes, 2 losses in a row. He's looked very mediocre in his UFC run. It might be best for him to get cut from the UFC and just get some seasoning. Whether if he goes to World Series of Fighting, that wouldn't be too bad. There's some pretty tough guys there, though. If he fights like Berkman, Paul Yardes, Shields, or Fitch, that'd be really tough for him. There's some tough guys. He can fight like a Tyler Stinson, I suppose, and whatnot. But I just think he's signed too soon to the UFC at this point. Okay, on to the prelims. Jake Matthews defeated Deshaun Johnson by unanimous triangle choke in the 3rd round. I read a thing about Explode Fight Series, and Deshaun Johnson came from pretty much Explode Fight Series and fights in the Explode Gym. And it's pretty much a place where guys that have some promise generally get fed just your definition of a can, and builds up a guy's record so that they get signed to like Bellator or some of the bigger places. And some guys have actually done really well under Explode Fight Series, and even the Explode Gym. Robbie Peralta comes out of there, and he's actually pretty good. And then Derek Anderson, who fights in Bellator, not a bad fighter. I see flashes of good athleticism from Deshaun Johnson, but he doesn't belong to the UFC. He doesn't know how to react to certain situations. For a guy with a boxing background, that guy was winging some funny punches. He hits hard. He actually got Jake Matthews coming in with a really like a Shryukin uppercut, a tiger uppercut, pretty much. He was throwing that from his ankles, But otherwise, he didn't really seem to know what he was doing there. Jake Matthews, on the other hand, kind of looks like 19 years old. Slick triangle choke, man. He took the back. And then Deshaun kind of, managed to reverse and get on top, only to fall into a triangle. Matthews looks really good. I like his ground and pound. He still needs work, though, man. That guy rushes in, and he gets punched for rushing in really bad. So he still needs work, but he looks like he could be a quality prospect. Big for the weight class. Pretty good on the ground, like I said, I liked his ground and pound. The way he got the submission was pretty clean. Striking still needs some work, especially defensively, but it's not too bad. I'm curious to see where Jake Matthews goes from here. I gotta say, I'm actually pretty high on him. His age and the fact that he's only showing the skill set that he's showing in pretty much 6 fights. It's a pretty good look for him and his prospects in the division. I think he should get more lower to mid-tier fighters of his division. Deshaun Johnson, I'm going to say this. I know he's only had 1 fight in the UFC, but unless they use him as a guy for someone to get a win off of or something like that, he doesn't belong in the UFC. And it's nothing personal. I don't know the guy or anything. It's just like, his skill set really shows, and the way he fights, he's just not a UFC. He's not ready for this level of competition. Next right after that, Richie Vasilek. I think it's Vasilek because it's Voss. I'll say Richie Voss. Defeated Rodon Saint-Jean by unanimous decision. It's kind of it pretty much went the way I thought it would. I knew that Voss would be better on the ground. Saint-Jean, still young, a good scrambler, decent stand-up, still needs some help defensively, though. He's the better prospect. I wouldn't even say Richie Voss is much of a prospect, to be honest with you. Whereas Saint-Jean, he could turn out to be something. Not a blue chip prospect, but a guy that would turn out to be good enough to find the UFC and have some staying power in the UFC. But pretty much, I thought that Voss would use his superior wrestling and just superior grappling to get the win here. Got Saint-Jean on some bad positions. I think he took his back and whatnot. But Saint-Jean showed some good toughness and whatnot. Both these guys just aren't much UFC caliber guys, but they actually turned out to have a decent enough fight. But both of them have roles. I know the UFC still wants to go to the Philippines. Getting a guy like Saint-Jean isn't the worst thing. Bachelor Voss, he's Australian. He's coming off a win. Definitely fight on more Australian cards. He had a tough first out too in the UFC to fight Justin Scoggins in your first fight in the UFC. That's just tough, man. That is just a rude welcome to the UFC. But he plays a role, He could be in the Australian cards or and cards in New Zealand and whatnot. So, good win for Richie Voss there. Both these guys, more lower to mid-tier guys of the division. Next fight after that, Vic Rujic defeated Chris Endich by TKO. Considering that these guys are pretty low-level guys, I actually had a decent fight. I'm glad it just ended. I'm glad it ended in a finish. In the first round, nonetheless, Both these guys, lower-level guys. Grudic's not much of a prospect. He's in his, mid-30s. Endich is still young, but, man, he just does not show the greatest skill set. Arguably an early stoppage, but, it's not the worst thing in the world. I picked Grujic to win. He did. And it's just, in a lot of aspects of the game, most guys in the UFC are just better. I don't know how else to say it. It's just, most guys in his weight division are going to be better strikers, and most guys are going to be better wrestlers and grapplers. It's just the way it is. I think it's 2 losses in a row now. I don't think he really belongs in the UFC at his skill level. He's still young and he can get better, but he needs seasoning pretty bad. I can see him get cut from the UFC. I just don't see a role for him there. Grudic, just more lower level guys of his division. Next fight after that, Neil Magny defeated Rodrigo Monstro Guana de Lima by TKO in the second round. Tough first round for Magny. He managed to catch a kick, throw a punch, which got De Lima to the ground. But De Lima showed his superior jiu-jitsu skills. And, man, they were superior. I got to say, half guard sweep to top position, got the mount, kept Magny in the mount, and then just De Lima managed to stay in dominant position for a long time. Showed really good top control, really good mount control. I know some fighters and some jiu-jitsu practitioners don't like going into mount because it's really easy to get swept from the mount and whatnot. But some guys, Diego Sanchez actually is really good at it. De Lima is really good at it. Are just really good at keeping the mount positioned. I like what I saw from De Lima in the first round as far as his ground skills go. But, man, did Neil Magny turn it on in the second round. He was a much better striker. He was just lighting up De Lima, using straight punches. Showed some killer instinct. Nice finish, too, man. Really went for that finish. Made a statement, because despite Magny's... I said this actually in the predictions. I like what I see from Neil Magny, which is funny because I believe it was Colton Smith that ended up winning his season of The Ultimate Fighter, right? I want to say it is. I'm not 100% sure. There's so many seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. I think he was in the Carwin Nelson season, which was like one of the worst seasons ever. And I want to say that's the season that Colton Smith won. I could be wrong, but Magny was a guy that was just... I didn't think he'd stay in the UFC. I really didn't. I didn't think he'd be able to beat good, decent people. I think pretty highly of Tim Means, for example. Beat Tim Means. Some people thought he beat Seth Basinski. But, this guy has really been, turning it around. He became a good striker. He uses his reach really well. His grappling's getting a lot better. Like I said, not a blue chip prospect, but still a prospect nonetheless. Definitely a guy that's showing that he can stay in the UFC. It seems like a pretty tough out for a lot of guys at this point, too. With Magny, I think I like what I see from him. Maybe give him Gastelum. Maybe a guy like a Cote. If you want to give him Whitaker, that wouldn't be the worst fight. Want to give Magny Court McGee, not the worst fight there either. So yeah, I like what I see from Neil Magny. With De Lima, just more lower to mid-tier guys of his division. If he can cut down, might be a good idea for him. Next fight after that, Daniel Hooker defeated Ian Entwistle by TKO, his elbows in the first round. Pretty embarrassing performance from Entwistle. I knew he was a guy that loved going for leg locks. But man, he gave Hooker the win here. More or less. It was just it, but in the sense that Entwistle just, did not know when to let go. Held on to this leg lock attempt for way too long. And just got it pounded out because of it. Just terrible. I guess fight IQ pretty much from Entwistle. I know it's his go-to move, but man, no one, something's not gonna work here. Just a good one for Hooker, and just I can't really deliberate too much from from Hooker here. You know, he showed good ground and pound. Showed the ability to capitalize on an opportunity. So just more lower to mid-tier guys for both of these guys. Entwistle, I mean, what can I say? With a lot of these guys, they just don't look the UFC ready. Entwistle, from that performance, kind of showed that he's just not ready for the UFC at this point. And finally, John Vellante defeated Sean O'Connell by split decision. Fun fight, man. I liked what, you know. John Vellante is pretty much going to be this guy. It looks like it. I mean, even back in Strikeforce till now, he just looks like this guy. A good enough striker, bad cardio, bad stand-up defense, decent wrestling, actually. He actually has some decent takedown defense and decent offensive takedowns. But, like, for the most part, he looks like he's going to be in, like, stuck in mid-tier purgatory. But he should be able to still win fights in the UFC against lower level guys. Sean O'Connell, 2 losses in a row, but he did get Fight at Night. Showed good toughness here, you know. It's a thin division, you know. If they want to keep him, it's not the worst move in the world, you know. It's kind of, like I said, coming out to Fight at Night. And he's in a thin division. I can see him staying in the UFC. Just both these guys should get more lower to mid-tier guys at the division. So that's pretty much it for my post-fight analysis for UFC Fight Night 43. If you have any comments, just leave them below. That's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.